Well, here we go. After driving to Detroit, we flew through Amsterdam and then on to Helsinki, Finland. This map shows us starting in Helsinki, crossing the Arctic Circle to the top of Norway, boarding our ship, and cruising 1,000 miles south to Bergen. Sitting at the highest point of the city is the Helsinki Cathedral, an evangelical Lutheran church originally built in 1830 and completed in 1852. The church seats 1,300, and its 205-foot dome is visible throughout the city. The Uspensky Cathedral is a Finnish Orthodox church. Dedicated to the Virgin Mary, it was built in 1862 and opened upon completion in 1868. This monument is dedicated to the beloved Finnish composer Jan Sibelius. He was the composer of several symphonies, but is most famous for writing the symphony Finlandia, a favorite of symphonies around the world. In the heart of the cultural district is the Parliament Building, with a spacious plaza adjoining the state-of-the-art Oodi Library, built in 2018. The South Harbor is continually busy with tourist attractions. Leaving Helsinki, we flew north to Rovaniemi and then bussed to the Arctic Circle. Crossing the line of the Arctic Circle, we found the main post office of Santa Claus. That's one of Santa's elves, explaining the many destinations of Santa and his reindeer. Arriving at Kouvola, our guide Stephen is greeted by Jana, the owner of the resort. Jana told us of some of the history of the area and how her husband built all the buildings on their property, including their own home.
Welcome to Kouvola. Are you coming in for lunch?
After a wonderful lunch, we continued on exploring Lapland, home of the Sami people who have lived in northern Scandinavia since prehistoric times. Our guide Stephen is greeted by Joku and his daughter Sana. We visited the Sami family who own this reindeer farm. Reindeer, known as the caribou in North America, is native to the Arctic tundra and mountainous regions of northern Europe. The reindeer is the only species in which females, as well as males, grow antlers. Every year they grow a new set, and as the animals age, the new set grows larger and larger. Reindeer have large special hooves with 4 toes on each foot, which provide a number of benefits in their harsh Arctic environment. Reindeer have 2 coats of fur. These reindeer are shedding their outer coat. This is what they look like with 1 coat of fur. Sana demonstrated a traditional Sami chant. Now we're visiting the Siberian Husky Farm, famous for pulling dog sleds. These huskies are used in the winter to pull tourists deep into the wild to discover gems like the Northern Lights. I'm ready, let's go. Walking around the buildings, it's clear that they haven't cleaned the roofs in a long, long time. We're at the borders of Finland, Russia, and Norway. We'll cross into Norway, and being advised to not attempt to set foot in Russia. They are watching. We have reached the northernmost city of Norway, Kirkenes, where we'll board our ship, the Polaris, and start our cruise south on the Norwegian Sea. Kirkenes has a population of 3,529 inhabitants. And here's a fun fact. In the winter of 2006, Kirkenes opened an igloo hotel with 8 rooms. Of course, the hotel must be rebuilt each year. It is the most famous igloo hotel in Norway, and possibly the whole world. With a short stop, we had just enough time to look at the Vardahus Fortress. There were several of these fortresses built around Norway in star-shaped form to ward off cannon fire. This one was built around 1734. As we pass our bouncing sister ship, we send a horn blast salute. We're approaching Hammerfest, a northernmost city where the midnight sun shines from mid-May to late July. It's a modern city of 10,500. We had time to look around. We found Valdemir, the beluga white whale who was rescued by fishermen. It was brought to the port and never left. The whale had a collar attached to it when it was rescued, and that collar was believed to hold a Russian transmitter. So now Valdemir has a home, and Hammerfest has an unusual attraction. On our way back to the ship, we found the modern Trinity Lutheran Church. National Geographic magazine has awarded the fjords the best unspoiled travel destination in the world. The fjords are listed as one of the 7 wonders of nature. What is a fjord? Geologically, a fjord is a long, narrow inlet with steep sides or cliffs created by a glacier. Sailing south, we're approaching Oaksfjord, getting a glimpse of a glacier. Oaksfjord is 70 degrees above the Arctic Circle. This small town, with a population of 500, has a fish processing plant and a shipyard, and they are dependent on the bounty of the sea. We're passing by small villages like Harstad, Sortland, and Markness that are situated in this beautiful area of mountains. In total, there are 291 peaks in Norway, with elevations of 6,500 feet or more. Lofoten is an archipelago, a large group of islands with dramatic scenery and mountains that reach for the sky. These islands have for more than 1,000 years been the center of great cod fisheries, especially in the winter, when cod migrate south from the Barents Sea and gather in the Lofoten Islands to spawn. We left the ship for a drive through the countryside and found this beautiful scenery at the end of a fjord. In the Hurtigruen Museum, you'll find models of their entire fleet of 14 ships. 11 of those operate on the coastal voyages. Let's watch the beautiful scenery go by. The Troll Fjord has a narrow entrance to its 1¼ mile length. Its width goes from 2,600 to 3,600 feet and is 236 feet deep. There are 291 peaks in Norway with elevations of 6,500 feet or more. Due to the warming Gulf Stream, the Norwegian fjords experience a mild climate. That means they remain nearly free of ice and have an abundance of fish, seals, and porpoises in the water. Trondheim is a city of 193,000 inhabitants. It lies at the mouth of the Nidelva River in the Trondheim Fjord. It is spoken of as one of the typical wooden cities of Europe. It has many special buildings dating back to the 1700s. A major fire in 1681 destroyed most of the houses in the city. So the city was redesigned in Baroque style with wider streets to prevent future destructions. The Nidaros Cathedral was built over a long period of 230 years, from 1070 to 1300. It was designated as the Cathedral of Nidaros in 1152. The turmoil of the Protestant Revolution in the 16th century ended up taking the church away from the Catholics and established it as the Church of Norway in 1537, which adopted the teachings and reforms of Martin Luther. We're entering Kristiansand, where scientists believe that this was the first place the Norwegians lived at the end of the Ice Age, around 8000 BC. The ferry service is important. It connects the surrounding islands with Kristiansand. The waters here were loaded with cod, and people found a way to preserve the fish by salting and drying them. The statue is of the lady holding a dried cod called clipfish. On the hill is the Norlandet Church, built in 1914. At some of the ports, we stopped just long enough to drop off the mail, and then continued on. A new day of cruising started out with a layer of fog. These are the sights as we're approaching Bergen. Bergen is our final destination of the coastal cruise. It's located on Norway's southwestern coast, surrounded by mountains and fjords. Bergen is so colorful, featured by the wooden houses on the old wharf, once a center of the Hanseatic League's trading empire. The Fisherman's Museum features a replica of a Viking ship. St. Mary's is a Lutheran church built in 1183. Bergen is known as the City of Seven Mountains. The city center and the northern neighborhoods are on Byfjorden, the name of the city fjord. Even the sewer covers in Bergen are beautiful. As we were shopping, we found this life-size moose, and in the same store we found these trolls. We spent our free morning at the aquarium. The funicular was our next adventure, taking us high above the city for this panoramic view. There was a whole family of goats living atop the mountain, and this one struck a pose. We're back at the old wharf, preparing for our early morning train excursion through the mountains. This train ride is called Norway in a Nutshell, with the highlight being a roaring waterfall. Our train ride ended in Flan, at the end of the Sonja Fjord. It's fortunate that a few stave churches remain. Approximately 1,000 of them were built between 1130 and 1350, but only 28 of them are still standing. The stave churches were built using more than 2,000 pieces, all secured without using nails. The major uprights, or staves, form the framework of the central room. The new church, next to the belfry, was built in 1877. Oslo. The capital of Norway is located at the end of the Oslo fjord, from where the city surrounds the fjord like a horseshoe. Oslo and the greater Oslo area has a population of 1.3 million, making it the biggest city in Norway. Sitting high and overlooking the city is Akershus Castle and Fortress. It's a medieval castle built to provide a royal residence and protection for the city below. It was constructed in 1290. The installation place of Gustav Vigeland's sculptures is in Frogner Park. You'll find 212 bronze and granite sculptures, all designed by Vigeland. The bridge is the connection between the main gate and the fountain. The bridge, lined with 58 sculptures, including the popular Angry Boy, was the first to open in 1940. We passed through the rose garden as we approached the fountain. This fountain, adorned with 60 individual reliefs, was originally designed to stand in front of the Parliament of Norway. The monolith plateau is a platform made of steps that houses the totem. The monolith is 46 feet high, composed of 121 human figures rising to the sky. These figures were carved from one block of granite, making it a true monolith. It took 3 masons 14 years to complete the sculpture. There are 36 figure groups on the steps that surround the totem. 8 wrought iron gates depicting human figures were designed in 1937 and erected after Vigeland's death in 1943. Leaving the park, we passed by Vigeland's Ring of Life. The Viking Museum has 3 ships on display, richly decorated with detailed carvings. They were used as burial ships for the wealthy. These 2 pictures show the condition of the ships as they were discovered. The Thun ship was found in 1867 and was the first to be excavated. These ships were found in burial mounds around the Oslo fjord. They had crossed the seas before becoming the final resting place of their wealthy owners. The Oslo Opera House is the home of the National Opera and Ballet. It opened in April 2008 as part of the revitalization strategy. The angled exterior surfaces of the building are covered with marble and granite that make it appear to rise from the water. This 39-foot stainless steel and glass sculpture floats in the fjord waters, and is able to turn on its axis with the wind and the tides. The pyramid is an art project to remind people of the traditional fish racks. Artists are permitted to use the rack to express their artistic ideals. This artist hung 1,200 shirts to say we are still all the same.